Good afternoon, colleagues, once again. My name is Kosie Tuntuli. I'm from the Research Capacity Development Unit at the Postgraduate School. I would like to welcome you to this exciting workshop of this afternoon titled Ethical Sorry for that. Sorry for that, colleagues. Let me just stop sharing rather. Um, Apologies for that, colleagues. I think my headphones, they just keep on pausing and playing the music. Apologies for that, colleagues. I am Gosie Tunduli. I'm from the Research Capacity Development Unit at the Postgraduate School. Thank you for joining us in this insightful session for this afternoon, titled Ethical Thinking in the Age of Generative AI. Where are we and why it lies ahead? So I must say this workshop is organized by the Department of Educational Psychology. So thank you, colleagues, for coming up with this great session. We're looking forward to a productive and insightful presentation from our colleagues, Rev van der Merwe and Dr. Isadi. Thank you, colleagues, for organizing and be the facilitators of this great session. So before we can move on, colleagues, I would like to notify you that this workshop is recorded as the sign has already started. So we will share the recording as well as the presentation of this workshop with everyone who has attended and those who have not attended the workshop to our module communities, which is the supervisor as well as the PDRF module communities. And also we'll share with the colleagues from the Department of Educational Psychology to share with their mailing list or their database as well. So if you have attended the workshop, we will share it right at the end of the workshop. As soon as the recording is available, we will share with everyone. So don't be alarmed, colleagues, if you see the recording of this workshop. So, and before I can introduce our facilitator, as I've mentioned, they are from Educational Psychology Department. So thank you, colleagues, once again. I would just like to go through some few housekeeping rules. Please note that if you do have a question, you are more than welcome to just raise a hand or alternatively type under the chat or under Q&A, or if you do have any contribution, and then I will notify our facilitators that someone has a question. Dr. Isidi and Reverend van der Merwe, if I may ask, would you prefer to take questions at the end of your presentation or as you go with your presentation?
Probably at the end of both presentations, so that we give enough time for reflection, for comments, and perhaps sharing of questions.
Okay, thank you so much for confirming that. So colleagues, during the presentation, you can just note down your questions if you do have, and then we will have a Q&A session right at the end of the presentation whereby you can make your contribution or ask any question that you might have. But if you do have any pending question, you are more than welcome to just type under the chat as soon as you get that question. Type under the chat or type under the Q&A, and then during the Q&A session, therefore, we can go through all the questions that are available. Also, I will be sharing a feedback evaluation under the chat during or toward the end of the presentation. The feedback colleagues help us in terms of improving our service delivery. As I've mentioned, this is a collaborative session, so the organizers are Department of Educational Psychology. So we'll share the feedback with the colleagues to see or to evaluate how the workshop was for them and also for us as a co-organizer. So we kindly request your 2 minutes, 3 minutes to take the feedback. It helps us in terms of improving our service delivery. So thank you for that. And also, if I have enabled your mic during the Q&A session, please do make sure that there is no sound or background noise that coming from your side that can disrupt interrupt the proceeding of this workshop. So please do make sure that you are in a quiet space if your mic has been enabled. However, if you see that your space where you are has a lot of noise, you can just type under the chat rather than unmuting your mic. However, we do encourage interactive discussions, so don't shy away if you do have any burning question or any contribution you would like to make. Colleagues, now allow me to introduce our facilitators. As I've mentioned, we have two facilitators for this afternoon workshop. The first facilitator, we have Dr. Chiwedu Esedi, and the second facilitator, we have Reverend Dion van der Merwe. Both colleagues, they are from Department of Educational Psychology. Thank you once again, colleagues, for organizing this workshop. Let me just introduce each one of them. I will start by going through the bio of Dr. Chiwedu Esedi. Dr. Esedi serves as a senior lecturer within the Department of Educational Psychology. He serves on in the editorial boards of several international journals, such as the Journal of Rational, Emotive, and Cognitive Behavior Therapy, BMC Public Health, PLOS1, and Medicine, United States. He supervises postgraduate students and serves as an external examiner for student dissertation. That is Dr. Esedi, colleagues, as our first presenter or facilitator for this afternoon. Now allow me to introduce our second facilitator, who is Reverend Dion van der Merwe. Reverend van der Merwe is a lecturer in the Department of Educational Psychology at the University of Johannesburg and a registered educational psychologist. He coordinates the B.Ed undergraduate program in life orientation and neuro-developmental learning needs, and supervises research work in the M.Ed educational psychology and masters in inclusive education program. His research focuses on the challenges faced by marginalized students such as LGBTQ plus, neurodivergent and disabled learners in navigating adversity in schools. He examines how educators perceive and respond to these experiences in advocates for resilience, inclusion, and effective support system. That is our second facilitator, colleagues, Reverend Dion van der Merwe. Once again, colleagues, thank you for joining us. We're looking forward to a productive and insightful session. So now I hand over to our facilitators, both Dr. Esedi and Reverend van der Merwe. Thank you, colleagues. Now you can start with your presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, colleagues, and welcome to today's workshop on ethical thinking in the age of generative artificial intelligence, which comes with a question that wants us to think deeply about where we are right now and what lies ahead for us that are in the academia. In today's section, I'm going to start by giving a brief intro about what we know regarding generative artificial intelligence. And for the rest of the workshop, I'm going to use the keyword Gen AI. So for me, Gen AI, they are a set of algorithms and models that often produce new content in various forms. Of course, I know we are conversant because most of us, we've been researching or trying to connect with this, what I call the AI boost, in terms of what it can do, the possibilities behind, or the possibility that lies with the use of Gen AI, from writing tests, creating images, music, code, videos, in response to the prompts that we give to these algorithms and models. Of course, we know that there are a lot of benefits that are associated with the use of Gen AI. But for this workshop, our focus is on the ethical aspect. The ethical aspect. And a major question that I have raised for us to ponder on is this: can Gen AI create with ethical intent, or is it the capacity for ethical, or is the capacity for ethical reasoning solely left for humans? That is something we need to think as we are exploring deep into the content of this workshop. When we talk about ethical thinking, what do we mean in terms of ethical thinking? For me, I consider it as a process of reflectively evaluating one's own actions, decisions, and their consequences when it comes to moral principles, societal values, and well-being of others. That is what I consider ethical thinking to be. And at the center of this thinking lies the issues of awareness. At the center of this thinking also lies the issue of principle-based reasoning. And for those who thinks ethically, they engage in critical reflection, and they are always accountable to whatever they provide. They take responsibility for the decisions regarding whatever they provide in the academia, in terms of the information that they provide in the academia. And ethical thinking requires long-term thinking. Of course, when you talk about awareness, you need to recognize that our action or decision actually do have potential ethical implications. And these are the things we want to explore. We want to understand what are those ethical implications when it comes to the work we do in the academia, either as students or as lecturers or as researchers. When we consider it, this issue of Gen AI boost that we've found ourselves in. Now that we've understood what ethical thinking is all about, I want us to also explore the ethical thinking principles and possible dilemmas that we often face. Because, of course, it's easy to say, okay, you should be aware of your decisions when it comes to what you provide, the information you provide, or how you make use of Gen AI. That is easy to say. But sometimes we find ourselves in situations that we begin to doubt what is right or what is wrong in terms of how we use Gen AI these days. But I want us to examine some of our actions using some ethical frameworks, such as the deontology or utilitarianism and virtue ethics. I also want us to consider academic dilemmas when it comes to AI-generated essays, articles, assignments, images, videos, or even in terms of the research that we do or the assessment tasks that we set for students. I also want us to think about who should be responsible when Gen AI causes harm. I'm going to raise these questions, or I'm even raising it right now because of how I've seen most people make use of these AI tools. And for the fact that I've seen that there is no, should I say, the policies available are not even clear in terms of what should be, what should guide students in terms of how well they use AI tools, or even the lecturers in terms of how well they use the AI tools. In terms of the ethical guidelines regarding the use of AI, we don't have any, I must say. So let us examine these issues. Maybe that can actually help us in terms of how we contribute to the discourse in our respective faculties or department when it comes to issues of AI. For the deontological ethics, it's all about adherence to moral rules, duties, or rights. And that duty, it means if we take it in the context of the work that we do, either as lecturers, as students, let me say for students, it means the student has a duty to be honest and to complete their own work. So for me, when students uses, let's say, the Gen AI tools to generate essays, the question would be, does that violate the rule? Does it violate any rule? Of course, in my own small thinking, I would say using ChatGPT, for instance, to generate essay would violate the rule: do not plagiarize or cheat. Even if they think, okay, maybe they need to do this because time is running or anything. For me, on my own part, if I draw from the deontological ethics, I would say that they need to understand that they have a duty to be honest. But there are also dilemmas in terms of the claim I have just made, which we are also going to explore. And you will see my point when I say it doesn't stick to issues of academic integrity when you are using AI tools. You will explore with me the ethical dilemma as we go on. What about the issue of utilitarianism when we consider ethical frameworks and Gen AI? Of course, we understand that when it comes to utilitarian ethics, we want to weigh the harms and benefits to everyone affected, and we want to choose the action that minimizes or that maximizes instead the net positive outcomes for everyone. And so, if I'm applying this, I would ask, if I were to be a student, I would ask, if I use AI to get good grade, what are the consequences? Because I'm not trying to weigh outcomes for the greater good. Who are those that will be affected if I use AI in ways that are problematic? Myself, my classmates, my lecturer, institution's integrity. Do I have to consider this in terms of the harms of and benefit that's associated with the problematic use of AI tools? These are the questions that the utilitarianism ethics is trying to make us think about it. It wants us to respond to these questions, to weigh the benefits and the harms that comes with problematic use of Gen AI. What about the virtue ethics? What can we say about the virtue ethics when it comes to AI use? Think about, what kind of person do I want to be? What kind of student do I want to be? What kind of researcher do I want to be? What kind of lecturer do I want to be when it comes to virtue ethics? Character, integrity matters a lot. Of course, in one of the universities I attended, they say for them to give you a certificate, you must be worthy in character and in learning. So even in the midst of this Gen AI boost and all that, we need to consider the ethical implications of using AI in problematic ways that will affect the kind of person we want to become. We should ask, is the way we're using Gen AI consistent with the kind of person we want to be or the kind of person we claim to be? So when you're applying virtues ethics, the key virtue at stake here could be issues of honesty or integrity. And so when we are considering these ethical frameworks, we must ask ourselves, who is responsible when AI causes harm? That is where the challenge lies. There are disclaimers in terms of what we find in platforms, letting you know that you are on your own in terms of whatever information you get here. But oftentimes we also see that people take it verbatim, the information they get from the Gen AI algorithms and models. And if you provide information that causes harm, that damages the reputation of your institution, your own reputation, or even that of others, who do you think is responsible for that harm? And like I asked in the beginning, do Gen AI have that ethical intent? Do they possess that ethical intent? Of course, I do not think they have that. I don't think so. But that is left for us to address as we go on. So here I want us to explore different ethical scenarios and ponder on how these things impact the way we teach and the way the students learn. For students who are here, I want you to also think of how it impacts the way you learn. And then let us think of responsible approaches to resolving the ethical dilemmas that we face in the use of Gen AI. I've raised important cases here, and I know this is going to generate a lot of controversy, but let us consider it. I have said, what can we do in cases where, for instance, student A's submission was flagged by Turnitin AI detector as having, let's say, 99% likelihood that it was AI generated, while the submissions of student B, C, D were evaluated as having 0 likelihood that they were AI generated. Now, my question is this: how did student A generate the content for their assignment? And I was wondering, did they only use an AI tool for unpacking concept? Of course, sometimes when I ask students, or when I write to them and say, okay, I've detected AI traces in your assignment, can you explain what happened? And the students will say, I only used it to unpack concept, or I only use it to edit my work. But my concern comes from the fact that let's say in a class of 100, 80, or let's say 99 also used similar tools to edit their work, and it wasn't showing. How is your own showing 100%? So I'm asking everyone, did they rely entirely on it for generating and completing all aspects of the task, which ordinarily would have required a high level of critical thinking and originality on their part? And I'm asking everyone again, would full disclosure by the student explain how such a submission is to be assessed? Of course, I read a recent article posted in our platform, and in that article, the authors alluded to the fact that even lecturers can likewise have, let's say, task set that will be easily picked up by AI detection tools as something that is AI generated. And I keep asking, given these scenarios, what should we do? What should we do as institutions, as academics? What are we going to do? Because these are situations that keeps us in a tight corner. And of course, most institutions, from what I heard, are even trying to avoid the issue of AI detections in terms of student task and all that. But is that the right way to go? What is the right way to go as institutions, or even as students and as lecturers, given these ethical dilemmas that we seem to face in how assessments are being approached, and both from the perspective of the lecturers and from the side of the students? And also giving the false positive warnings that comes from even the detector tools that we use. These are certain things we need to, certain questions that we need to talk about. And I'm raising these issues because when it comes to AI generated content, the question is always, who owns it? If a student has used AI to generate a larger portion of the work, now who owns it? Should this not be tagged as plagiarism? Does this not compromise academic integrity? And if, for instance, the algorithm produces a biased data, are we considering the people that is going to be harmed, even though we feel it's assignment? Can these students actually operate creatively and independently in the workplace? Because we are trying to produce people who will have creative thinking, independent thinking skills. But another thing is this, in terms of our teaching, how are we going to ensure fairness and equity when students continue to use Gen AI? Of course, we know there are students who wouldn't want to use Gen AI. So if they don't use it, and there are others who are using it, are we promoting digital inequity? Or are we trying to bridge the gap that is already existing? Of course, these are questions that we need to find answers in our respective spaces. And as the workshop goes on, I want us to ponder on these issues. Beside the ethical dilemmas, the ethical implications, we know that Gen AI do have enormous benefits, both in the academia industry and in our daily life. Of course, we can't doubt how much helpful Gen AI has been to the work that is being done in different spaces. And it appears it has also increased how much access we have to most information that we ordinarily couldn't find, and how it has made most of our tasks efficient. But we do have concerns, which stems from issues of plagiarism and authorship, the biased nature of the algorithms and the models, and then the issue of misinformation and hallucination that comes with AI. Of course, it can give stupid information most of the time, and it gives you information. If you are not somebody who is grounded in terms of the kind of information you're looking for, you are going to misinform the public, or even your lecturer. For instance, if I assume a student using it for whatever reason, you could provide information that would misinform the public, or even the person who is going to access your script. And then most of the information do not come with the accurate evidence, and you are likely going to have issues of copyright issues, especially for those who generate images and sounds. And like I asked earlier, are we actually considering the digital inequality that exists in our own setting that is unique to our own setting before pushing ahead with issues of Gen AI? Of course, it's a welcome development, but have we really bridged the digital divide in our own setting before pushing for this? There are a lot of students who do not still have access to technology. It may sound surprising, but that is the truth. So during the time I was preparing for this workshop, I came across the South Africa's National AI Policy Framework, and I was like, oh, this has been there since 2024. I felt like, yeah, I think these are things we need to look at and see if we can adapt certain aspect of it in the ways we do. We try to treat these issues of Gen AI in our setting, especially in the academia. And I do encourage students to also take a look at the National AI Policy Framework and see what you can learn from it. Of course, there are lessons to be learned from it as a student. And both as staffs, there are lessons we can learn from the South African National AI Policy Framework that is there. From my distance, it was released 2024. So check it out and see. So in terms of where we are now, of course, most institutions, especially like UJ, we do have some guidelines that tries to teach staff or they educate staff on responsible use of AI tools. But for me, I still want to ask, is that enough? Has that really improved the way students engage with the Gen AI tools? And that is one of the motivations for this workshop where we felt that, okay, there is need to engage with both students and staff, where we can probe deep into their reasoning so that by motivating them to think ethically, we assume that they will be able to redefine or perhaps reimagine how they would engage with Gen AI tools going forward. But I think as institution, we also need to think of AI education and literacy for our teaming student population and our staff. So at the moment, while there are evolving policies and some improvement in AI systems, they are still not enough to justify the issues of, let's say, how well they provide accurate information to those who use them, who prompts them for relevant information. The development has not really provided the much needed accuracy. I can't even say that I don't have 95% confidence interval when it comes to the use of Gen AI. I can't give them that. So imagine a system that doesn't have up to that 95% confidence interval. It's something we must use with care at the moment, because for now we haven't gotten to that stage. And so during this time, I was also envisioning the future. I was trying to say, okay, I did ask myself, now that this thing is trending, of course, it's not quite long since it's trending. And I was looking at 25 years from now, what would an ethical AI integrated university classroom look like? And that is a question I want everybody to ponder on. How would a classroom look like 25 years from now? Of course, AI is not going away. It has come to stay. And so we must think ahead of time. And then when we realize the fact that it has come to stay, a major task on our own part is to also think of how we can ensure that improvements in Gen AI, the roles and responsibility and emerging risk are clearly defined and communicated to both students and staff. And this is something that institutions need to take the lead in terms of following up with developers, collaborate with developers. They understand, like most of these developers, they are just computer scientists. Most of them are not even in the academia, so they don't even understand issues of the issues we are concerned with in the classroom or in the assessment and all that. But if universities collaborate with these developers and maybe through consultation with student bodies, I assume that we can improve the extent to which this Gen AI tools support university education. And we can probably start to think of how we can make it more inclusive and just in terms of its usage in our university education. So for me, I also assume that, of course, I've tried, because for me, I don't just say do something. I also try to implement what I say you should do, because I feel that any action, any responsible action should start with me. And so when it comes to updating curriculum to include Gen AI ethics, I've tried to implement AI ethics and adolescent pedagogy, where I'm going to teach students who are learning how to teach adolescents. They are being prepared to teach adolescent students, and I know that the students at that adolescent stage, or learners they are going to engage with, are actually digital natives. They are people who are conversant with AI, technology, and all that. So right now, I've incorporated it in my module in such a way that students they are going to learn how to engage meaningfully with Gen AI, understand the ethics behind it, and then connect it with what they do in the classroom when it comes to assessment. Because I know that the people we are training now, of course, most of them, when they are given tasks or when they are employed, they will not leave Gen AI alone. Most of the tasks they are going to engage with in terms of teaching their students, of course, they are going to try to use it. So the earlier we start incorporating Gen AI ethics into our curriculum for both undergraduates and honors, it's going to be a better approach for us. So I also think we need to promote critical use of Gen AI tools across the programs. And as lecturers or researchers, we also need to initiate both interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary dialogue about Gen AI use in research and teaching. And in as much as possible, we need to support responsive use of Gen AI. We need to promote it in terms of research and essay writing, because when people understand the ethical implication of using AI in problematic ways, I think they will have to rethink how they engage with these tools. So for students, I want the students to, of course, I used to tell my students, if you want to engage with Gen AI, no problem. But please understand that the Gen AI shouldn't be the author of your content. Gen AI is like an assistive technology for me. So consider it like to be an assistant. If you put prompts, instead of using the Gen AI to generate the content, use it to understand keywords in the question, probe further to understand what the question requires from you instead of using it to answer the question directly. And for lecturers, I would say clarify academic integrity requirements and be transparent in Gen AI use for task completion. Just as I would tell the students to, if you use AI, clearly indicate what you used it for and be honest. Remember issues of the remember the ethical framework we just talked about. Consider the benefit and the harms that you are going to cause if you don't disclose how much AI contributed to the task that you've submitted. And for researchers, we need to report transparently how much we have used Gen AI in our work. And for the researchers, we also need to consider AI to be an assistive tool, not as the author. And so you use it in such a way that it does not become problematic to you and to your institution. It shouldn't dent the integrity of your institution or the reputation of your institution just because you have refused to understand the ethical implication behind problematic use of such tools. And to do that, build ethical reflexibility. And this is what we are saying here. If you don't know if you don't have much digital literacy, there's nothing that prevents you from upgrading your skill. Upskilling is allowed. Upskilling, learn more about technology. The little you know, if you know little about technology, learn more so that you can be able to make effective use of Gen AI tool if you wish to use it. The issue of authentic voice, it's something that I often emphasize to my students. And when I'm reading a task, I will tell you, I am not hearing your voice in this task. That is my problem. You have used AI such that you've lost your authentic student voice. And of course, I know we are going to have a lot of debates in terms of what I have shared now. But when we are debating, let us put at the back of our mind the national curriculum statement and the kind of people we are supposed to produce, the kind of people we are supposed to send to the society. So in our ethical journey, in terms of using AI, we need to consider certain gray areas. And we also need to stay updated about Gen AI development. So the last thing I want to share, which I draw from the fact that we always emphasize the issue of scholarship of teaching and learning as lecturers. So I just feel like, okay, given the rise of Gen AI tools in our education sector, for student researchers and for lecturers, let us consider exploring how these tools affect student learning and teacher practices. And I've just suggested certain areas we can look at. I've said, can we ask certain questions like, how do students perceive the use of Gen AI tools in their learning? And what are the ethical concerns when teachers use Gen AI to mark or prepare lessons? What are the ethical concerns when students themselves use Gen AI to complete those tasks? And does the use of Gen AI widen or reduce digital inequalities among students or learners? When we are responding to these questions or when we are making the decision to explore these questions, we need to consider our context. So as we reflect on most of the questions I've asked here, I do hope that we have something to share when it comes to the Q&A section. Thank you all for your audience.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Isedi, for such a very insightful presentation. If I may ask, is now this the time for Q&A, whereby we can take questions from our participants?
I think my second presenter needs to present his own, and then we cannot take both questions together.
Okay, no
so
problem.
let him present.
Let's now hand over to Rev van der Merwe. you can start with your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Chidu, and good day, colleagues, and welcome to today's workshop where we are looking at ethical thinking in the age of generative AI. And my colleague, Dr. Chidu, already um, took us on a journey as to what holds, what is holding together the question which is posed in the theme for today's workshop, where we are and what lies ahead, because those are actually quite important questions to ask, because we're no longer talking about AI as some abstract future. It's here, as Dr. Chidu has indicated, and it is woven into the day-to-day realities of teaching, of researching, of supervising, and yes, even um, writing dissertations. And so from Chat GPT and Copilot to grading algorithms and AI research tools, these technologies are shaping how knowledge is created and how knowledge is shared and validated. Therefore, this workshop, I think, is timely um, for those of us in academia. The stakes are particularly high. And I'm now asking the same questions which Dr. Chidu have posed. Whose voice are being heard and who's left out? Because those are actually quite important questions to ask as we watch AI integrating itself into our lives. And we should also be asking, what kind of future are we building with these tools? And who is shaping it? And who is paying the cost? Those are real questions. And to explore these questions, we can turn to someone I believe I met when I first entered into ministry, and that was someone who had nothing to do with technology. He was not a technologist, but whose work offers, for me, profound ethical lens. Um, and that is Paulo Freire. And Freire's life, his life's work, was really just grounded in one ethical goal, and that was liberation, liberation for all. And if you are interested to know about him, I think his latest video is available on YouTube, the latest one being 1996, given that he passed away in 1997. And so if you are interested and just curious to know about who Paulo Ferreira is, you're more than welcome just to go onto YouTube and just just watch the content which this amazing man has produced. And so for me, when I was introduced to the work of Paulo Ferreira by my spiritual supervisor, Dr. Reverend Stephen Barry, um, I was really taken by the fact that he was such a liberal in his time, not just from illiteracy, but from all forms of dehumanization. And he taught people not just to read texts, but to read the world critically to read the world ethically and to read the world collectively. And so I really followed the teaching of Paulo Freire throughout my ministry. And I need to confess, I still do follow. I do follow in his shadows of his teaching because what he has taught is still pulling at the strings of my heart, and I still believe that it is quite relevant. And Ferrer's vision wasn't about productivity. It wasn't about producing perfect workers or efficient outputs. It was about restoring dignity and agency, especially to the marginalized. And it was about freedom, freedom from systems that dehumanizes, that silence or marginalize. And in many ways, the same logic applies to AI today. Now, these tools can either expand potential or deepen inequality, as Dr. Chidu has pointed to, or it can deepen surveillances and social control. Now, let's explore just three core of Freire's ideas and how they speak to the current moment in AI and academia. And so I'm going to make use of Freire as a framework to just guide this the sensitive conversation, because I'm one of those people who need frameworks in order to think clearly and critically. Because if I don't have frameworks, I have the intention of coloring over the lines. Yes, I'm one of those students. And so for me, Ferrer just creates a framework for me just to understand this conversation, which is timely and which is important. And Ferrier's starting point was always human dignity. And education, he argued, must never reduce people to passive recipients. Now, the problem with passive recipients is that is that they don't often do not engage with the material, which then leads to superficial understanding of the content, right? Which in turn, I think, limits critical thinking skills. And as students, um, it is important that we do not just challenge. And I say as students, and I use the term we because I'm also a student, and I regard all of us to be students of life. That we should not just we should not just challenge, but we should also analyze or synthesize information. But passive learning also does not foster problem-solving abilities. And as students are not given opportunities to practice these skills actively, um, it might affect or show up in a way in a later stage of their life where they find themselves perhaps struggling with requiring to engage in active learning environments, and feeling perhaps uncomfortable or unprepared. And that is why I'm so happy that perhaps, UJ have introduced the oral component to the PhD program, because it then gives students an opportunity, yes, to orally present, but to also take ownership of the work that they have grappled with throughout their learning um, of of the compiling of the dissertation. And so critical thinking and problem solving aren't just academic buzzwords. They essential life skills that bring real, tangible benefits. But passive learning, where students just receive AI generative information without much engagement, can it can hold back the development of these skills. And here's why that matters. When you actively build your critical thinking skills, you're better equipped to analyze information, and you then make better, thoughtful, informed decisions. Because as we experience life, and this is what I always, this is how I explain it to my students as well, that what food is to the body, the environment, and what we expose our brains to, that is food to the brain. And so the frontal lobe um, develops by what we expose it to. And so if we do not expose ourselves to content and perhaps information that challenges us to think critically, then are we developing ourselves in ways that we ought to be developed? And also, it matters because learning to think critically just teaches you how to approach problems with both structure and creativity. Now, creativity is that which we first explore with as a child. But as we become much more mature, we become much more serious, and for some reason, and I don't know why, we stop playing, and we then tap much more into structure. Um, and I have found that the happiness of, or the joys of really navigating academia spaces is to have both structure and creativity, which for me significantly improves your problem solving skills. And as you get better at navigating complex ideas, you will then gain confidence in your ability to just handle challenges, which can lead to real, to a real boost of one's self-esteem. And we all know, I mean, psychologists keep on telling us that the simplest task of just making your bed, or experts keep on telling us that, but a simple task of just making your bed, releases happy endorphins in your brain. Um, can you imagine? Can you imagine navigating complex ideas and actually overcoming and finding answers, or perhaps new ways of exploring? That in itself will boost your self-esteem, which will obviously affect how you then show up and embody the work that you are currently doing. And then also, something that we tend to forget is that learning isn't always neat, and learning is not always tidy. And that's actually a good thing. The so-called messiness of human learning is what makes it meaningful, and I think is what makes it effective as well. And while AI has made impressive progress in mimicking human behavior, it still doesn't really or truly understand what makes us human, especially when it comes to our emotions and thought processes. Now, emotions are messy. Um, deeply personal, and it really shaped by context. Things AI can't genuinely grasp, even if it can detect a smile or a tone of voice. What it cannot grasp is the emotions that are deeply personal and that are shaped by the context in which the person is in. And so, cognitively, also, AI lacks lived experiences and self awareness. So, while it can process information fast, it struggles to understand meaning, intent, or the complex why behind our actions. So, in short, AI can simulate parts of human behavior, but emotional and cognitive understanding remains far beyond its reach. So learning isn't just about processing information. It's deeply, for me, emotional, which has been coupled together at birth. Your limbic system and your frontal lobe has been coupled together at birth. Our feelings shape how we write, how we pay attention, how we remember things, and how we stay motivated. So this emotional layer is tied to complex brain processes, which really shows up on write-ups that AI simply can't replicate. And the students who are under my guidance for supervision would know that it takes some time to work through a proposal, because what has led them to apply and look into the topic was something that was pulling at the strings of their heart. And research is not, yes, it's a matter of the heart and the head. And the exercise of the proposal for me is always to connect the head and the heart, so that so that what they produce healed towards social justice, but also um, um, you know gives back to them in a way that brings about growth. And while AI can analyze data or mimic emotional cues, it doesn't actually feel or understand the emotional and cognitive experience that drive real human learning. And so a lot of emotive language happens when students write their first proposals, and it is through working out through those complexities that they get to understand how to perceive or look at or engage with perhaps the topic that has pulled at the strings of their heart. And so I just want to also indicate that, keeping in mind all of that which was shared, I want us to pause and look at perhaps a picture of a real life scenario. And 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 this is perhaps some of the this is some of the dilemmas that one has come across through in conversations with either students or with colleagues. And this dilemma is as follows, and it says a postgraduate student submits an impeccable dissertation, and you expect it was heavily, if not entirely, AI generated. Reporting it could derail the academic and professional future, but ignoring it compromises academic integrity. So what do you do? What do you do in this regard. And I want us just to think about it, and wherever you are, if you are able, perhaps write your ideas down somewhere. But I want you to just think about the question, what do you do? Because I want us to really reflect on this dilemma during the Q&A session, because this is the kind of moral complexity Ferrer would argue us to confront, not with black and white answers, but with a commitment to justice and dialogue. He would probably ask, he would ask us to probably lean into the tension and embrace the complexity and ask, what does justice look like in this context, the context of this dilemma? And how can we respond ethically without defaulting to punitive measures or ignoring structural inequalities? And so I want us to think about it, because I would really like to hear what you have to say. Because for me, the territory in which I'm in, and that is in the conversation of AI, for me, that is quite explorative. And it needs community in order to navigate. And I think the more we have conversations and the more we share opinions, the more we can dive deeper and wider and perhaps get closer towards a place where AI is accommodated in a way that is fair to everybody. So Ferreira would call the exercise that I've asked you to think about, he would call it, I'm going to try and pronounce it in the way it should be pronounced, and that is conscientious. And this is basically just the ability to see the world critically. And it is about really just developing awareness of the social, the political, as well as the economic forces that are shaping our world. In AI terms, this means asking not just how to use these tools, but why and for whom and at what cost, right? Because there is so much happening in the world. And I came across just this one video that perhaps I was drawn to out of curiosity. And that is a good thing. Ferreira said that is a good thing. You need to be curious in order to learn. And I want to share this video with you just as a deeper dive.
On this laptop, I've disabled Wi-Fi on this phone, so all traffic will go through this Ethernet adapter. At the moment, I'm not seeing any countries and cities, but if I run ChatGPT, as you can see, immediately traffic is being sent to various cities in the United States. So that's the issue when you run these LLMs. You are sending data to obviously a server somewhere. Now, some people complain when I asked the AI this question, rather than looking at the privacy statement of DeepSeek. So in this example, I'll ask the AI the question as well, but then we'll look at the privacy statement for ChatGPT so you can see the data that's being collected about you. So I'll ask it the question, is my data sent to the USA? Here you go, here's the answer from ChatGPT. As of now, data exchange with the system might be processed in locations like the USA, depending on the server infrastructure used by OpenAI. So this is from OpenAI's privacy policy. When you use our services, we collect personal information that is included in the input file uploads or feedback that you provide. So basically, anything that you do on ChatGPT can be logged and collected. So things like your IP address, browser type, and settings, the date and time of your request, and how you interact with their services is logged. Your usage data is also logged, such as the types of content that you view or engage with, the features you use, and the actions you take. Device information, including the name of the device, operating system, device identifiers, and browser you are using. So if I ask it another question, what data is collected, you can see that traffic is being sent to the USA. They say that they want to minimize the collection of personal data, but again, look at their privacy policy. Now, at the time of this recording, Australia has banned DeepSeek on government devices over security risks. Both these companies, OpenAI as well as DeepSeek, are collecting a lot of data about you.
And so that brings us back to the question. And that question is, who will be affected and at what cost? And so if you would like a deeper dive, I would advise you to go and look at the video on YouTube, which is called, If You're Not Paying for the Product, You Are the Product. And it's quite an interesting video. And just to give you a synopsis of the video, it speaks about the fact that if you can't pay for the certain platform and you use, for example, open access or the open or the free version, then information shared on the open and free version is ultimately made available. And so in a context like South Africa, what does it mean in terms of equality? Because the truth of the matter is, how many people will be able to afford the paid version compared making use of the open access version? And again, also, if such sites are allowing you to make use of their servers for free, the question which is posed in that video, is it actually for free? Just questions to think about. Because are these tools encouraging original thought, or are they just churning out just quick answers? And are we equipping ourselves to basically just challenge the algorithms that are shaping our lives? Or are we just passively accepting whatever comes out of the chatbot? And I want to introduce another dilemma that I just want us to think about after we've watched the video and have listened into everything that was said. And that is, you hear that a student is using AI just to create fake screenshots to damage a classmate's reputation, and you're not directly involved. But how, or but you know it's happening. So how do you act? Or do you stay silent, is the question. Now, as we think and reflect, Ferreira would remind us that there is no such thing as neutral education. Silence often sides with power. And in digital spaces, that silence can enable harm. We are trying to figure out what ChatGPT means to us in the here and now, while it could be that in the same breath, it has the potential to write the potential future. And so if a site like that needs a product and the audience is a product, it then begs the question what the purpose is. And as researchers and supervisors and postgraduate students, I think our challenge is to really resist passive consumption of these tools and to develop a critical relationship with them. In other words, instead of just accepting or giving it information so that it gives it back to us, we should allow ourselves to be exposed to different forms of reading material written by different people, engaging with articles and books, and conversations, so that it can inspire our thinking, so that when we engage with this tool, we engage critically, we challenge the algorithm, because ultimately that is what it does. It puts together different words and sentences that speaks into the question that you have asked. And it creates a narrative that for many, when they read without being critical, it will come across as very philosophical or as the truth, not giving you the curiosity to basically ask why. So for Ferreira, learning is quite rational. It's built through dialogue, not just depositing like data in a machine. But AI, especially in academic settings, is often introduced as a shortcut. And what gets lost in the rush? What gets lost in the rush is the dialogue, is the questions, and the human messiness that real learning demands. So let's pause here and just reflect on just 3 core pillars of meaningful education. And the first one is relationships, because learning is deeply relational. Whether it's a supervisor nurturing a student through research dilemmas, or peers debating methodologies in seminar rooms, these connection matters. They build trust and they offer emotional support, and they really just provide space for academic growth. And AI can supplement these relationships, but it can't replace them. Secondly is the questions. When we don't learn by getting answers, because we don't learn by getting answers alone. We learn by just wrestling with better questions. Generative AI is amazing at giving us fast and fluent responses. But if we're not careful, we'll stop asking the question, why? Because questions ultimately drive cognitive development and self-reflection and high-order thinking. And that is why as young children, as they develop and they want to know more, or they're excited, or they're just curious, they would always ask, why? And that is something that is deeply rooted and part of us that we should never lose. And if we're not careful, we'll stop asking why. So as supervisors, it's our responsibility to really foster a culture where questioning is not just allowed, but expected. And then again, it's the human messiness. And you've probably heard that term quite often throughout, because academic life is not tidy at all. I'm a PhD candidate. I know it's not tidy. Research is unpredictable. Writing is irregular. Collaboration is quite complex. And that's a good thing, because this messiness creates the space for transformation, for learning to become a human process, not just a technical one. Even within higher education, within those spaces that should model ethical leadership, we are struggling to keep pace with the dilemmas AI presents. So let's name a few. And Dr. Chidu has already alluded to it. And Ferreira, instead of looking at the glass half empty, when speaking about equity and access, insisted that education must center the marginalized. But AI, looking at how it's set up, especially when it's tied to commercial models, can really deepen inequality. Some students use advanced AI tools because they can afford them. Others are stuck with free versions, as I have mentioned, that has harvest data or none at all. And for some, AI just offers much needed support. And for others, it adds pressure to compete in ways they're not equipped. So the ethical question becomes not just, is AI allowed, but who is empowered and who is excluded? And that brings us to transparency and accountability. Ferreira emphasized the truth-telling in education, as Dr. Chidu has alluded to. So when AI is used in our assignments, in our feedback or our supervision, we need to ask, are we transparent with our students? Do they know what data is used? Do we know how to model works? And when things go wrong, as Dr. Chidu has said, who is responsible? Now, universities are really starting to develop ethics policies around this phenomena. But we must go even further. We must be clear about the guidance in the syllabus. We should have open conversations about academic integrity, as Dr. Chidu has pointed out. And the curricula that includes should perhaps think about including AI literacy and ethics. Because as educators and as researchers, as supervisors, as learners, as students, we must model ethical use, not just for the sake of following rules, but because of the academic integrity that is at stake. Ferreira also warned us of the banking model of education, where students are just treated like empty containers to be filled. Now think about it in this way. Many AI tools, if uncritically used, reinforces that banking model. Through what? Through the automated output. I ask a question, it gives me a paragraph. Isn't that the same as the banking model? But we should keep in mind that knowledge is not a commodity. It's a co-created process. We must challenge passive learning and prioritize critical thinking, collaborative inquiry, and self-authority. Even when it's slower, even if it is harder, or even if it is messier. So where do we go from here? How do we embed Ferreira's ethics into our evolving practice? Well, we can start by developing AI literacy, not just AI fluency, because ethical use starts with understanding. We don't just need students who can operate AI. We need students who can question it. Because as much as we contextually are busy with decolonization, we need to start decolonizing the possible future that is being written by this machine. We need to ask, who built it? What are its assumptions? Where does it fail? Who profits? And who pays? AI literacy must include data ethics, algorithmic bias, surveillance capitalism, and ownership of ideas. Everything that Dr. Chidu alluded to as a concern. Because these conversations must be embedded into research methods, supervision, and teaching practices. Just the other day, in another workshop regarding AI, a colleague shared that by virtue prompting ChatGPT with information that I think was quite unique, and it suddenly appeared in a different conversation on a different platform, was baffling to her. And so we don't know what is happening in the background, but we ought to guard our intellectual property. And so Ferreira also points to co-creating AI practices with students. And he believed learning should be done with students, not to them. So why not really involve students in shaping how AI is used? Where we allow students to share how they're using AI in their research and what ethical tensions they are facing. Perhaps assignments could even require students to use AI tools to generate ideas, then reflect critically on the output's accuracy, the biasness, and the usefulness. Let's reframe AI as a site of inquiry, not just as a tool. By so doing, I think we will be in the forefront of decolonizing the future, which is currently being written through the algorithms. And lastly, establishing clear, not ethical, but value-based guidance in regards to AI. We need not more ethics. What we need in this regard is values-based policies, not just technical rules, but moral principles anchored in transformation, which gives clear communication about what is allowed, justice, which speaks deeply and fairly in terms of fair access and accommodation, dialogue, which welcomes open discussions, not fear, and respect for learners and for authorship and for intellectual labor. So universities have an important role to play and have an opportunity here to model ethical AI use. And so beyond academia, the wider ethical horizons could have a lot of possibilities. But just taking from Ferrer's vision, which was never to confine learning to the classroom alone. He asked us to just see education as a tool for social transformation. And today, AI isn't just reshaping higher education, it's influencing. So we, in turn, need to be quite critical in how we approach it. Because we need to critically question whose interests does AI serve and who gets to resist or reshape it. We should be equipped not just to navigate AI, but to critique and transform it. As Hendrik Gerrits puts it, education must teach skills, meaning, and the power to challenge oppressive systems. So lastly, I just want to say that it's easy to feel overwhelmed by AI. It's fast, it's powerful, and often a talk. But Ferrer's reminder is quite clear that we are not powerless, we are not just users, we are citizens in a world that AI helps construct. That means we must resist the temptation to accept things as they are. We must ask, what kind of future are we participating in? And how can we build one that is more just, more human, and more free? And so my final reflection is a reflection where Ferrer taught us that education is never neutral. And he also reminds us that education is in order to liberate. But let us also be mindful that the tools that we have reflected on today, it can either liberate or it can domesticate. It can either open doors or it can lock them tight. And the same is true to AI. If we treat AI as a shortcut, it will flatten our thinking and narrow our imagination. But if we engage it critically with ethics, dialogue, and critical thinking, it can open space for transformation. So let's make space for critical questions, for ethical courage, for human messiness. And let's not forget, in a world of smart machines, our deepest responsibility is to remain deeply and fiercely human. So, as lecturers, supervisors, and postgraduate scholars, I invite you to ask yourself, how are you shaping the future of education? And how can you ensure that AI is used not to replace thinking, but to actually deepen it? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time.
Well, thank you so much, Rev van der Merwe. That was a very informative presentation. Thank you, colleagues, and to the first presenter, Dr. Isedi. Thank you, colleagues. I must say this was a very informative and insightful presentation. I wish all the students were here just to hear or just to take some notes from this wonderful presentation. And now, colleagues, the floor is open to questions. We will be taking out questions or any contribution that you might have. You are more than welcome to raise your hand, or alternatively just type under the chat. We have some quite few comments under the chat. Just allow me to go through those comments, and then we will be taking out questions shortly. I have noted your hand, Dr. Unisa. So I'll take your question shortly right after I went through the chat. So let me start from the chat. There is a comment or a contribution rather from Dr. Sesi. This is a complex conversation from first facilitation to this. While we may not be able to convince students entirely about the extent of use of AI in academic activities, I think the starting point is to incorporate AI use as an academic course. The abuse we see is because we are yet to teach proper AI use. No matter how we see it, the world is daily driven by changes in technological use. What I think the academic community needs now is to design an academic curriculum that teaches AI as a course, not just talking about the ethical implications of abusive use, but also how to use it in an academic sphere. I also know that now, just as there are plagiarism checkers for detection plagiarism in academic writing, there is also AI detectors in academic writing. Our universities will have to adopt the AI detectors. This will not only save the student from future damages, it will also ensure that what students write or what academics produce will reflect academic integrity. So that was a contribution made by Dr. Sesi. The second one, exactly, Doc, this is very important. Unless students know and understand that there is an institutionalized rules and learning on how to use AI in academic research, making them to agree that their projects are AI generated will remain an issue of denial. So let me stop here from now, and then I will continue taking the chat. Let me go to the hand, and then I'll come back to the chat. Dr. Unisa, you can go ahead and ask a question or make your contribution.
All right. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
All right. Thank you. My name is Dr. Yunus Abdurrahman, calling from Federal University of Kashui in Nigeria. Well, I think that there are more to this conversation than just what we are having here today. Because, well, I am of the opinion that as the world is evolving, so as technology is evolving as well. Now, while concerns about students using AI for assignment or task are actually valid, Now, if you go down history, it has actually shown that integration into education is almost inevitable. Now, just the way we have calculators in the past, search engines, and online encyclopedia, which has transformed learning today. Now, AI will become part of the intellectual toolkit, whether we like it or not. Now, the ethical imperative is not just to resist its presence, but to also redesign assessments as well as pedagogy and critical thinking in such a way that we are going to train students so that the AI becomes a collaborator rather than a shortcut. Now, in other words, our challenge is not just how to stop students from using the use of AI or other chat box or something, but how do we ensure that AI leads to deeper learning, originality, critical thinking, and integrity as well. When you say you want to shy away from student use of AI, students with access to AI literacy will definitely outpace those who don't use it, which actually is actually deepening inequality. Now, ethics is here is also about the ethical concern is also about fair access, inclusion, and also preparing all learners for what is obtainable today. So I think the question here or the focus should be how we can encourage students or building a model that will encourage the ethical use of AI rather than shying away from the use of it. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Iseru van der Merwe. You do have something to take or to say with regards to the few comments that I've just read and the questions or contribution that Dr. Unisa just made.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. I think it is important that we do share our thoughts, because it is through these collaborative efforts where we share our thinking, where we perhaps can just forge a way forward in terms of trying to ground this as one of a tool that can serve rather than cripple students, but also the learning process. And so I agree with both commenters in regards to what they have shared. Thank you so much. And I just want to encourage everybody to please do share your opinion, and please do share your experiences, and let us reflect and let us have a conversation.
Okay, thank you for that. Now let me go back to the chat. I see there's a question from Ariel. If I write my own idea or notes, but ask AI to refine it, for example, to improve my English or to use more technical terms. Sometimes AI detection tools classify the text as 100% AI generated. Even though the idea and work are mine, how should we handle such cases? Rev van der Merwe and Dr. Isedi, would you like to take that question, or should I just go through everything on the chat and then you will answer?
Doug, let me say something regarding this. This issue of using it to refine, I think this is where we talk about people having independent skill. I know in school those days, we are being taught how to paraphrase, even though we are not from, let's say, should I say, English is not our native language per se. And I've seen instances where journals will tell us to reject an article as an editor because of these issues. When people relies on AI tools for paraphrasing, for me, I think it is something problematic if someone should rely on AI to paraphrase the content fully. Instead, what they encourage us those days is to collaborate with our colleagues, maybe who are a bit stronger in terms of use of language to help us read through our, maybe a senior colleague or a mentor to read through our papers instead of taking your original idea and then giving it. AI is going to introduce odd errors into it. That is just the truth. And that is why you see that the dictator tools we target as 100%. These things are code. People in computer, I think Dr. Eunice will be able to actually explain the mechanism behind these AI softwares and how they work in terms of removing your work from that original voice or tone that you used and then making it as if they have now generated it. So that is why if you have your ideas, if you're able to make your ideas, I don't see the purpose of not giving it to AI tools to refine. Rather, I would suggest give to a colleague who is a bit stronger in use of English, or send to English editors. They can help you improve. If the issue is language flow, they can help you to go through those things and then improve the language or the technical aspect of your work. So I wouldn't encourage you to put something you've written originally back to AI tools to now refine it. That is my take on that.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Iseri, for that answering. I have noted your hand, colleagues. Let me just finish up here firstly. Another question from Dr. Munongi. Brain poking questions, and thank you, colleagues. How do you deal with the case of one student who admits the use of AI unethically and one that denies it, yet as an academic, you can clearly see it has been unethically used?
I think there is a moral complexity dilemma. And so if you let it go, what are you teaching the student about lying, number one? And are we not setting them up to believe that they can get away with a lie, therefore they can become a problem to society? Or are we all about social justice? And sometimes social justice means that we need to lean into the truth.
Okay. Thank you, Raf, for that. Dr. Koyama, you can go ahead. I see Dr. Munong has raised a hand. Probably she has a follow-up question. So we will take you after Dr. Koyama. You can go ahead.
Okay, for me, it's Ms. Koyama. And for me, I think it's mostly just a comment. And I wanted to comment on the comment you made with regards to decolonization. And for me, I think we need to really realize as lecturers and as those working within the higher education institution, the power and the influence we have, not just with us amongst colleagues, but also with our students, but beyond that, even those that we are not teaching directly, right? Because we are within the space where we can really influence a lot of the education structures, because we are those who are training those who are going to be teachers, doctors, wherever they go. So I think if we really tap into the realization of the power we hold within the higher education universities or sectors, it then will dawn to you that, when you are faced with challenges of AI use, or maybe seeing students who are not using AI correctly, then it will dawn to you that actually my duty is beyond just teaching, but I have such an influence that does not directly influence the person that I'm with, but that goes beyond there. So as we grapple around the issues of using of AI, I think beyond that, we really need to come back and tap into our powers that we have been trusted with, which are just so great. And then in that way, we realize that it's not just the mere of just paraphrasing or the student just submitting their work, but it's a bigger issue that we, as those within this higher education sector, have to really, really be responsible with. So for me, it's just more about that as I listen to this engagement, that actually the powers that are before us are just so great, and we really need to be responsible towards that.
Well, thank you so much for that contribution, Ms. Koyama. Colleagues, Dr. Iseri and Rev. van der Merwe, before I can take another question, I see Dr. Utu, and then I will also go through the chat as well. So if you have any contribution or anything to add on what Ms. Koyama has just said.
None, sir. Thank you so much, Ms. Koyama, for your contribution. Well noted.
Okay, I move on to Dr. Otu. I see your hand was up. You can unmute your mic and make a contribution.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, the presenters. I was really impressed with the presentations, and a lot have been said already. I just want to emphasize that ethical or unethical use of AI is dependent on the institutions. So by now, I believe institutions and organizations supposed to come up with what I may call AI committees, because the AI is not looking like it's leaving us. It's coming to stay with us. So institutions can have committees that oversee the use of AI. And this would lead to what I may also call AI education. I think people need to be educated about how AI works. How can it assist us to do our work better? It's not to take the work for us or to take the work from us, but to help us do the work. There are many aspects of this discussion that we've not even touched. We've not gotten to the technical aspect, like even the detector. I think someone mentioned using AI detectors. The detector itself is also problematic. Okay, someone say maybe we should add human voice and make it look like human. There's different kinds of AI that does different things. So AI can actually bypass the detector, can be set in such a way that the detector is not effective enough to detect that AI was used. So at the end of it, we realize that the earlier we begin to educate ourselves, educate our students on the appropriate use of it, that's if the institution accepts, the better. And let me also say that an individual may choose not to use AI to allow him or her think properly. An aspect of that education will be able to communicate this. Yeah, because if you are using AI for everything, just like the use of calculator, if you recall when we were in primary school,
Okay, colleagues, can you still hear me, or I'm the only one who just lost Dr. Otu?
I've also lost him. I can't hear him.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Dr. Munonge, for that. I think now we'll come back to Dr. Otu as soon as he has sorted out his audio. Probably he's having a problem with network. Dr. Munongi, you can go ahead and I'll go through the chats after you.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you so much, colleagues, for the mouthful of a presentation with very informative points there. But I saw someone who commented that this is a complicated issue, and I still find it complicated. And one thing that
Sorry?
makes this even complicated is Okay. One thing that makes this even complicated for me, given the dilemma that I presented of one student who, when you ask them a simple question, why did you use it? And they admit, they apologize. I am sitting with a student who apologized for using it unethically because she was sick and she just wanted to submit the assignment. Yet, as a university, we have got policies, clear policies, that if you are sick, you ask for an extension. And I've never denied my students that. Then comes across another student who says, I never used it. And where the complication comes in is as a university, correct me if I'm wrong, but from the conversations that we have at faculty level, plagiarism committee, we don't have an AI policy. So that student, if brought before the plagiarism committee, we I don't think we have a way of handling that case if the student is denying, because it's my word versus the student's word. And if you also look at the detection tool that we have at UJ, if you are using the not the yeah, the Turnitin assignment app, you will find that it dictates, it gives you the percentage, but that percentage is accompanied by a tricky statement that kind of says you cannot totally base your discretion to discredit the student based on this percentage. And that leaves us as academics, well, with no leg to stand on, although it highlights sections where AI has been used. And I think we can also tap from the comment of the previous person who mentioned that the starting point is to have a module where we teach our students how to use AI ethics, including us academics as well, just like the colleagues were saying. And only after we have gone through that training, if someone is found guilty, then maybe we have got something to refer back on. Just like we teach learners, our students, about integrity. I see, like universities like UNISA, they've got a compulsory integrity course that if you don't do it as a university student who is enrolled with UNISA, you can actually be called out or for not doing that course, or you cannot proceed with your studies. I don't know what the penalties are, but from the look of it, if you don't do that course, then there are consequences, academic consequences to that. And maybe this is the conversation that we should push forward to the higher authorities to introduce such a module in the university. So the dilemmas are so many. This is just one of them that I have presented. I could spend the whole day giving you different dilemmas from my experience. So maybe we need to think about this and push this forward at higher levels. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Munongi, for such a great contribution. Ref van der Merwe and Dr. Isedi, do you have something to say or to add with regards to what Dr. Otu and Dr. Munongi has just said? I know, Dr. Otu, we just lost you while you were still talking, and then probably we can just come back to you and give a chance to our presenters for their opinion of view on what the two speakers have just said. Dr. Otu, are you still there?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I don't know at what point I was lost, but I raised the second point that AI education is needed to enhance appropriate use. We may not be able to shy away from the fact that AI is here. People are using it. So it should be a question of how can it be used in appropriate way. Then if we have ethical issues, it should now be a question of what ethical guidelines should we have. And then someone mentioned integrity. It should be a question of how we comply ourselves or how we align ourselves with integrity and trustworthiness in research generally. We know that there are a lot of things that can go wrong if somebody is not careful and is not deliberate about doing things right. Even without AI, there are other issues that can go wrong or that is even going wrong. So it's a matter of training ourselves to accept truth and then to live by truth. Thank you once again for the chance.
Well, thank you for that. Ref van der Merwe and Dr. Isedi, do you have something to add with regards to what the two speakers have just said? Okay, I see a thumbs up. Okay, let me go quickly to the chat. We have a contribution by Dr. Kolkoto. Apologies for mispronunciation if that's the case. Since generative AI isn't going away and use is only increasing, there is a value in considering universities developing their own institution specific LLMs that ring fence students' request to academic articles, resources, much like going to the library to take out a book. This will minimize data risk and allow AI to be used more effectively. So that was a comment or a contribution from the colleagues. Another one from Dr. Mabaso. Thank you, colleagues, for such an insightful presentation. The more we explore this topic, the more questions emerge. We face the significant task of integrating AI effectively while preserving the core principles of teaching and learning. That was a contribution from a colleague as well, Dr. Mabaso. Okay, that was Dr. Michael with regards to the comment or the issue where we lost Dr. Itu. Okay, there's another one from Yamkela. Wow, what an eye-opening discussion, as Doctor has mentioned, that we cannot shy away from the evaluation of AI, especially when we are encouraged to use them in our classes. Education 4.0, which is an approach to learning to meet the needs of 4IR learners, will use these technological tools unethical, which will catch up to them when they get to universities, which is now almost late as they were solely dependent in these tools. So it is important to learn more about using AI ethically early before we enroll into higher institutions. So that is the comment or contribution made by Yamgela. Another one from Dr. Ceci. Yeah, while I agree with you, I will also say that just like the case of plagiarism checkers that can flag words that are used repeatedly, even when you have put in your best effort, AI detectors can also highlight your work because of similarity of terms as AI generated when it's not. What is your thought about this? So that was Ceci. And then, yeah, that was it, colleagues, from the discussion under the chat. I see another one from Dr. Chauke. Thank you so much, colleagues, for this insightful discussion. And another one from Dr. Rabani. Thank you for this wonderful discussion. So thank you, colleagues, for all your contribution. Going back to our presenters with regards to the comment that or any contribution that I've just read under the chat, Rev van der Merwe and Dr. Isedi, any contribution or anything that you would like to say with regards to what colleagues have just said at the moment?
If given the opportunity, if you forget anything, please do remember the comments of Dr. Lucia and Dr. Otto, because I think in that we are challenged to really become active in the different spaces we find ourselves in, not just to think about the here and now, but the potential future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Colleagues, I don't see any new hands or any new comment from the chat. Perhaps if you still have a question, you can just unmute your mic and ask a question, or if you still have a contribution to make. I know now we have passed the time, but I feel like this session has more questions. Probably someone still has a question. So if you still do have a question, just unmute your mic or any contribution you would like to make. Well, in the absence of question, probably before I can officially end the session, colleagues, I have shared the feedback evaluation under the chat, as I've mentioned at the beginning of this workshop, that I will be sharing the feedback, and we kindly request you colleagues to take your 2 minutes, 3 minutes to fill the feedback so that we can increase our service delivery as well. Earlier that this workshop was organized. So thank you, colleagues, for organizing great work. I do hope and believe that colleagues will go out and share or teach their students advising. And the students that have joined in this session, I hope you learn something as well. Practice with regards to your research journey. So with that being said, colleagues, any last word from our presenters, from Dr. Isedi and Rev van der Merwe, before I can officially end the session?
Well, I just want to say thank you to all the attendees, my colleagues, students who actually devoted their time to attend the workshop, and for all their contributions. The initial time we conceived this workshop, we actually said it's going to be interactive, and we're happy to see that it was quite interactive. We didn't come to provide answers, but we came to brainstorm with everyone to think of the way forward. And I think for me, the objective we had in mind has really been achieved. And I want to say thank you once again to everyone. As you go to your respective spaces, we do anticipate that you are going to rethink or reimagine how you engage with generative AI tools. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Iseri, for that. Thank you, colleagues. We will share the presentations of this workshop as well as the recording as soon as it become available to be uploaded to our digital platforms. And we will also be sharing with the presenters as well to share out with all their mailing list or databases. So everyone who have attended this workshop, I can guarantee you that we will share all the resources that were being used in this workshop. So thank you so much, colleagues, for taking your time in attending this workshop. We do hope and believe that indeed you have learned something. And thank you so much to our organizers and our facilitators for this workshop, Dr. Isedi and Rev van der Merwe. Thank you, colleagues. This was very informative, insightful presentation. Thank you so much, colleagues, for that. So I'll now be ending the session, colleagues. You can have a great day further. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.